In this lesson, we're looking at seascapes, how to paint a seascape painting. So it's very subject specific. We're not looking at color or value or a technical part of painting. We're just looking at a subject matter. So the same things apply to seascape as would to any kind of landscape. We're still looking for the different planes. We're looking for a good composition, finding the large shadow pattern, and then we're breaking up the landscape or seascape into large shapes of simple dark and light, and then the color. Same thing with color, large areas of color, dark and light. And this is a painting by Paul Loritz. He was an early California impressionist. You can see here, when you look at this, you can tell the light's coming from the right side. And all the shadows in here, there's that shadow pattern. And it might be a little more broken up now, but when you start out, it becomes a lot more evident. But finding that shadow pattern, very important. And just like in landscapes and some subject matters or some images, it's easier, some it's not. But we still want to find that shadow pattern. We still want to think in terms of simple shapes, simple values, and simple color. And the goal when I'm painting a seascape is just the same thing as a landscape. I'm trying to see what the light is doing to everything. If I can paint what the light's doing, it's going to be successful. And it's not about detail or showing every little detail in the waves. It's about getting that big simplified pattern down of dark and light shapes, getting the right values, and getting the right color temperature. And color is, of course, always secondary. But color and temperature is very important because the temperature tells us whether it's in sunlight or shadow. Now, the best way to paint seascape is to go to the sea and paint. But short of that, when we have images we're looking at, it really helps to see how other people have handled it. Like Carl Peters, Emile Groupé. So there's a lot of good artists out there to study. If you Google early California Impressionist seascapes, you're going to get a lot. Frederick Wall was a early 20th century painter, well known for seascapes, probably the best American seascape painter, or at least had the reputation of. But a lot of good seascape painters, and study and see how they simplified shapes, how they used edges in the seascape. And if you Google the names, you'll get 100 paintings for each artist. So the internet's a good resource for studying paintings. So when we look at this, if we simplify this, now this is a painting by Paul Loritz, early California Impressionist. He has that big pattern in here, starts in here, kind of, gets smaller in some areas, bigger, eventually comes around and connects up again. And that's what you want to look for, that big shape. In some images you have, the shadow pattern could be bigger. Here it's smaller because there's more sunlight than there is shadow, so the light areas are bigger. But even in the water, you start off with a pattern of this darker water. Even where it gets lighter, it has to be either on the light side or dark side, and then the lighter foam. So just two things, a darker, lighter. And you want to force everything into those two values. Same thing with the rocks, a simple light, simple dark. So whatever looks half-tone or looks in between, push it one way or the other. Because the more you can simplify these shapes and the values, and the color becomes a lot easier. Here the rocks are the focal point. They have the most color, the most variation, the most brushwork, most small little dark and light accents. And the water is handled in a lot more of a simple fashion. So everything is about simplicity. And right away we look at something like this and we see the subtle variation of color. And that's what we want right away. But he started with one color, whether it was this kind of muted red-orange or this muted kind of yellow-green. He started with one color in the light, one color in the dark, and then went in and broke it up. Remember to start those big shapes, big values. This is Jack Wilkinson Smith, another early California Impressionist. And these guys were early 20th century, mid-20th century. But what I like about this one, and this is a detail of it, it's not the full painting, is the broken color. So a lot of color in this water. And here, look at all the color in the rocks. Less color variation in the background because it's further away, but there's still some variation. You got orange, green, violet shadows. But everything is started with one simple value and shape. So all the water is blocked in, probably two values, the lighter value and then these darker values in here. Then broken up with greens, blue violets, violets, there's some orange, red, a lot of color in this water. But that one overall value is what makes it work. And there's not much value change in a lot of this color change. All the different colors in the water, the different colors in the rock, they're all about the same value, just subtle color changes. Now there are value changes, the dark accents, maybe some highlights in areas. When you're thinking about color change or broken color, you want to think same value, different color. Now this one is another Paul Lauritz, L-A-U-R-T-I-Z, I think. And again, the simplicity. We got this shadow pattern in here coming this way, crawling up here, picking up over here, and then also in the background, shadow pattern. And it's finding that first, getting the big simple darks and lights, shadow pattern up in here. All that kind of flows together and makes it work together a lot better. And the simplicity of the color, a lot of broken color. We talked about broken color in the last painting. Several colors in the lights here, maybe one or two colors, values in the darks. Some color change in the water, but not much. But a lot of color change in the rocks. And we'll find as we do it, water isn't one specific color, although we'll start with one overall color. This one has started more with the blue to blue-violet, then broken up. The rocks will be started maybe with a light orange, and then you go a little deeper orange, lighter orange, blues, violets. There's a lot of color in these rocks. But one overall color and value after you set up a real strong, simple design, and then go from there. And the more you can get that simplicity, the easier it is to do some technique and brushwork to show waves, rock, whatever it is you're trying to show. One more here. This is a Frederick wall. Not a lot of color. The color is very simplistic, but a lot of movement, action in the waves. But you got that simplicity here of everything from here down is in shadow, and then everything from here up is also somewhat in shadow. Not a dark, dark shadow, but this is your sunlit area. There's a lot of contrast in here. But if I can pick a value for that light foam in the shadow and a value for the dark grayish blue water in the shadow, then I have the same two colors only in the sunlight with some shadow. And then go back to the shadow of the clouds, blue of the sky. So you want to block in the painting again with as few large, simple shapes as possible. Get them the right value relationships and go from there. And remember also, if I want to see what value this real light wave is right here, I want to stare up here where it's a little darker, or maybe I'll stare down here where it's a little darker, but don't stare directly at what you're going to paint. You'll always get lighter and lighter or darker and darker. You won't get the correct value. So if I want to look at this area, what value is that? I'm going to stare at the darker. And kind of out of my peripheral vision, I'll see how much lighter this is. Then I'll stare at the lighter shape and see how these two relate, what the difference is. And that gives me a more accurate value. And that's what we want to shoot for. So the image, it's a strong sunlit coastal scene. The shadows are small because the sun is directly behind the viewer. So when I find a shadow pattern, it will be smaller at first. I might make it a hair bigger, some dark areas in here, maybe accentuate this dark. But I want a kind of a trail of dark or a pattern of dark that reads well, kind of flows throughout the painting. And back in here, these rocks are all kind of darks against the light water. And then the dark pattern up here and over here. And dark doesn't always mean shadow. Usually does. But can also be just a dark area like this. Very dark. It's somewhat sunlit. But it's a dark compared to the sky, compared to the light rocks, to the white water. So I'm going to force a shadow pattern here that works a little better. And then simplify shape. I'll have, of course, shape value of the sky, shape and value of these hills. I'll have two values on this large hill, the grass and the dirt. darker grass, lighter dirt. And then I have a value down here, light and dark. Value in the water, dark blue, warm white for the water. And the dark and light of the cliffs in here, and dark and light of the grayish cliffs. And same thing here. This is one big shape in value. Then this is another, that, and then that. So in front I have 3 large shapes, 4, 5, including the wet sand and the dry sand. So I want to simplify it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, maybe 16 big shapes. I don't literally count them. I'm just simplifying as I go. But I also, aside from the shadow pattern, I'm finding this big pattern of rock and cliff here. So I want to see the big land shape pattern. And then contrasting that's the water pattern. Shape of the water, shape of the beach, and then the sky. So that's even bigger solid shapes that I can look at.